Hello, children. Today we are going to study chapter number 4 of history. The name of the chapter is What Books and Burials Tell Us. Burials means burying of dead body. Now let us see. Mary in the library. As the bell rang, the teacher asked the students to follow him because they were going to the library for the first time. So, as that means the bell it rang, teacher asks the students to follow him, to go behind him. As you are going for that means smart class, or that means hobby classes, like that. Here, it was asked by teachers to his students to follow him because they were going to the library for the first time. Because you also used to go with your library teacher in library for your library class, like that. Those students also they followed their teacher for the library class. When Mary stepped inside, she found that the library was much larger than their classroom. So, as in when Mary, she's a student, she placed her foot inside that library room. She found there that the library room was much larger than their classroom, and there were so many shelves, all full of books. And there she find there were so many shelves, and all that shelves were full of books. In one corner was a cupboard filled with large old volumes. So at a corner of that room of library there was a cupboard. In that cupboard it was filled with large old volumes, large old books. Seeing her trying to open the cupboard, the teacher said, that cupboard has very special books in different religions. So, by looking her, that means trying to open the cupboard. If she tried, that means open the cupboard. The teacher said, or it might be that means opened by teacher. Seeing her trying to open the cupboard, the teacher said, that cupboard has very special books. It has very special books, and in that book, that means cupboard, the books were of different religions. Did you know that we have a set of the Vedas? So teacher asked Mary, did you know we have a set of the Vedas? What are the Vedas? Mary wondered. Let us find out. So, what are the Vedas? Yes, teacher asked, do you know that we have a set of the Vedas? Now, Mary wondered that what are the Vedas? Children, let us find out that. One of the oldest books in the world. You may have heard about the Vedas. Children, you may heard about the Vedas. There are four of them. There are four Vedas. They are the Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. So these are the four Vedas. Was you mark it? How many Vedas are there? Name them. You have to know it. This will be extra question. Okay. What are the four Vedas? Or that means how many Vedas are there? Name them. The oldest Veda is the Rig Veda. Which one is the oldest Veda among these four Vedas? You must remember Rigveda. Rigveda is the oldest Veda, composed about 3500 years ago. The Rigveda includes more than 1,000 hymns called Sukta or well said. The Rigveda, it contains more than 1,000 hymns. Hymns means a song of praise to God or to a saint or a nation, called Sukta. Sukta means a beautiful statement or well said. These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. As I already told you, hymns means a song of praise to God or to a saint or to a nation. But here in these Vedas we find what? These are uh, songs of praise to God. Hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. Three gods are especially important. So, among all gods and goddesses, three gods are especially important. They are Agni. Agni means the god of fire. Indra, a warrior god. Warrior means fighter god. And Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared. Soma, it is a plant, okay, from which a special drink was prepared. So here we find what are the four Vedas and three gods, three important gods, because you must know it. These hymns were composed by sages. Sages means rishis or sadhus like that. Priests taught students to recite and memorize each syllable. Syllable means syllable word and sentence bit by bit with great care. Syllable means a unit of pronunciation having one vowel sound with or without surrounding consonant. I think you know that means the syllable you have learned in your English grammar. So these hymns were composed, it is having by sages, rishis, priests, and taught students to recite and memorize to get by heart each syllable, word, and sentence bit by bit with a great care. Bit by bit means a small piece or part by part, with very great care. Most of the hymns were composed, taught, and learned by men. A few were composed by women. So most of those hymns they were composed, taught, and learned by men, and among them a few were composed by women. The Rig Veda is in old or Vedic Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit you learn in school these days. Rig Veda is in old or Vedic Sanskrit, which is again different from the Sanskrit you learn in school nowadays. Here, boys, you see Sanskrit and other languages, you get through it. The books we use are written and printed. The Rig Veda was recited and heard rather than read. So, here, the books we use are written and printed. The Rig Veda was recited and heard. Heard means listening. Rather than read, it was written down several centuries after it was first composed and printed less than 200 years ago. So it was written down several centuries, several, that means 100 years after it was first composed. and printed less than 200 years ago. How historians study the Rigveda. Historians like archaeologists find out about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Historians, those who deals history subject, like archaeologist means they are the scientific. Archaeologist is the scientific study of material remains such as tools, pottery, jewelry, stone, walls, and monuments of past human life and activities. They find out about past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Let us see how they study the Rig Veda. Now let us see here how they used to study the Rig Veda. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues. So some of the hymns praising to God or goddesses uh, in the Rig Veda, they are in the form of dialogues. This is part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was a great sage voice, and two rivers. They are bees and the sutlas that were worshipped as goddesses. So this is part of one such hymn, a dialogue in between says Vishwamitra and the two rivers, namely bees and sutlas, that were worshipped as goddesses. So these bees and sutlas, they were worshipped as goddesses. People regarded them as goddesses. Boys, let us see page number 37. A page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. Manuscript means written by hand. So here you can see it is a page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. This manuscript of the Rig Veda on birch bark was found in Kashmir. About 150 years ago, it was used to prepare one of the earliest printed texts of the Rig Veda as well as an English translation. It is now preserved in a library in Pune, Maharashtra. So, this page or manuscripts of the Rig Veda, it is kept in a library in Pune of Maharashtra. Let us see Vishwamitra and the rivers, the dialogue. Vishwamitra, O rivers, come down from the mountains like two swift horses, like two shining cows that lick their cubs. Vishwamitra said to those two rivers, bees and Shutles, he said, come down from the mountains like two swift horses, means promptly which can run, that type of horses, like two shining cows that lick their lips, licking, past the tongue, their young one, in order to clean their body. You move like chariots to the sea through the power of Indra. You are full of water and wish to unite with one another. So you move like chariots to the sea. So your that means movement. It should like that. Through the power of Indra, you are full of water and wish to unite with one another. The rivers, the respond rivers, what they said, let us see. We who are full of water move along the path the gods have made for us. Once we start flowing, we cannot be stopped. So it is natural to rivers as it started to flow. They cannot stop. Why do you pray to us, O says Vishwamitra? O sisters, please listen to me. The singer who has come from a distance with his chariots and cars, let your waters not rise above our axles, so that we can cross safely. It means here, O sister, Vishwamitra said to those rivers, please listen to me. The singer who has come from a distance with his chariots and cars. So let your waters should not rise above our axles, so that we can cross safely without any interruption. We can cross you, the rivers. We will listen to your prayers so that you can cross safely. Rivers responded. They will listen to the prayers of Vishwamitra so that he can cross, or that means other people can cross safely. Historians point out that this hymn was composed in the area where these rivers flow. They also suggest that the sage lived in a society where horses and cows were valued animals. That is why the rivers are compared to horses and cows here. And yes, that means those animals, cows and horses, were valued animals. That is why the rivers are compared to horses and cows. Do you think chariots were also important? Give reasons for your answer. Read the verses and find out what are the modes of transport that are mentioned. Verses means writing in which words are arranged in rhythmic pattern. Boys, these questions, you practice it. If you can't get the answer, you can send question through your WhatsApp and Sir will make that answers. Not only this question, any other question also. That means many questions you will find in the chapter which says written in different color. You try it. In case you find any difficulties, you send through your WhatsApp. I'm ready to make it. Look at map 1, page 2. Again, you must see here in map, okay. And you have to list 5 rivers that are not mentioned in the Rigveda. From that means your map, you can know it, you can mention it. Cattle, horses, and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rigveda for cattle, children, especially sons, and horses. So there are many prayers in Rigveda for cattle, children, especially sons, and horses. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles, which were fought to capture cattle. So horses, they were yoked. Yoke means yoke is a wooden beam normally used between a pair of animals to enable them to pull together. So we find here what these chariots that were used in battles which were fought to capture cattle. Battles were also fought for land, which was important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Battles were also it was fought for land, which was important for pasture. Pasture is a land used for grazing animals, boys, and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, which can that means ripen very quickly, such as barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people, and some battles were fought. It was for water and to capture people. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders. Some was given to the priests, and the rest was distributed amongst the people. So some property, wealth means property, some of the property that was obtained was kept by the leaders for himself. Some was given to the priest, and the rest was distributed among all the people. Some wealth was used for the performance of yajnas or sacrifices in which offerings were made into the fire. So some wealth it was used for the performance of yajnas or sacrifices. Yajnas means yagyas, jagya like that, okay? In which offerings were made into the fire. In which that means offerings it used to made to the fire. These were meant for gods and goddesses, and these were meant for gods and goddesses. In the name of gods and goddesses, these were done. Offerings could include ghee, grain, and in some cases animals. So offerings it could include following materials are such as ghee, grain, and in some cases animals. Animals that means it is required when a yagya or yasnas done, that is called Ashwamedha Yagya at the time animals often also used to do. Most men took part in these wars. There was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people met and discussed matters of war and peace. They also chose leaders who were often brave and skillful warriors. So most men took part in these wars, and there was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people just meet and discuss matters of wars and peace. They also used to choose leaders who were often brave. That means used to choose that leader who were often brave and skillful warriors. Yajnas means was a ritual sacrifice with a specific objects. Objects you find there, ghee, grain like that. Words to describe people. There are several ways of describing people in terms of the work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities, and cultural practices. So this here there are several ways of describing people in terms of the work they do based on their work, and see the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities, their own group and cultural practices. Culture which are practices all are not same or alike. They are different. So in the different ways describing people. Let us see some of the words used to describe people found in the Rigveda. Here and there let us see some of the words which were used to describe people were found in the Rigveda. There are two groups who are described in terms of their work. So according to their work or profession, there are two groups. They are the priests, sometimes called Brahmins, whose main purpose is to perform pujas like that. Sometimes called Brahmins, who perform various rituals, and the Rajas. That is the Rajas. These Rajas were not like the ones you will be learning about later. They did not have capital cities, palaces, or armies, nor did they collect taxes. Rajas means king's boys. So these Rajas, they were not like ones you will be learning about later. They did not have capital cities, palaces. Palaces means where the king used to rule, or armies, nor did they collect taxes. Generally, sons did not automatically succeed fathers as Rajas. So, generally, here sons did not automatically achieve the desired aim fathers as Rajas. Read the previous section once more and see whether you can find out what the Rajas did. Two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. One was the word Jana, which we still use in Hindi and other languages. Jana means people, boys. People. One was the word Jana, which we still use in Hindi and other languages. The other was Vish. The word Vaishya comes from Vish. It is a community of people. You will learn more about this in chapter number 5. Several Vish or Jana are mentioned by name. So we find a reference to the Purujana or Vish, the Bharatajana or Vish, and Yadujana or Vish, and so on. Likewise, like this, we find reference. Do any of these names sound familiar? Sound same? Sometimes the people who composed the hymns describe themselves as Aryas and called their opponents Dasas or Dashus. These were people who did not perform sacrifices and probably spoke different languages. Aryans, from the word Aryans, Aryas came. So Aryas and opponents, Dasas or Dashus. These were people, that means Dasas or Dashus, were the people who did not perform sacrifices and probably they used to speak different languages. Later, the term Dasa and the feminine Dashi, that means feminine of Dasa is Dashi, came to mean slave. So this Dasa or Dashi, they were known as slave later on. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. So they were treated as the property of their owners and who could make them do whatever work they wanted. They can make their work to complete by this Dasha or Dashi. While the Rigveda was being composed in the northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere. See, while the Rigveda was being created in the northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments some other place elsewhere means in some other place. Let us look at some of these here under in the next part of the chapter. Thank you all.